The rural road one day, and when he saw a three-legged chicken running down the road, he was amused enough to drive alongside it for a while. And as he was driving, he noticed the chicken was running at 30 miles an hour. Pretty fast chicken, he thought. I just wonder how fast can this thing run. So he sped up. The chicken did too. They were now moving along the road at 40 miles an hour, then 45. The man in the car sped up again, and to his surprise, the chicken was still running ahead of him at 60 miles an hour. Suddenly, the chicken turned off the road and ran down a long driveway leading to a farmhouse. The man followed the chicken to the house and saw a farmer in the yard with dozens of three-legged chickens. The man in the car called out to the farmer, "How'd you get all these three-legged chickens?" The farmer replied, "I bred them. You see, it's me and my wife and my son living here. We all like to eat the chicken leg. Since the chicken only has 2 legs, I started breeding this 3-legged variety so we could all eat our favorite piece." "That's amazing," said the driver. "How do they taste?" The farmer replied, "Don't know. Don't rightly know. I ain't been able to catch one." Pros and cons. Pros and cons. This morning you can turn to Genesis 37 through chapter 37 through 50 if you want. Boy, that's a big swing, ain't it? And we're going to talk a little bit about Joseph, but I'm going to do a history lesson here leading up to Joseph. And so Abraham and Sarah have Isaac, and they were like 191 years of age, right? And then Isaac marries around 40, and he's tricked by his father-in-law. And so he had to work for 15 years. He gets Leah, and then he gets the daughter that he was in love with, Rachel. And then Isaac has Esau and Jacob tricks Esau and his father getting his birthright, right? And so then Jacob has 13 children, right? And so 12 sons and 1 daughter. And in the order it's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And so Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are given as his inheritance because Joseph receives a double portion after Reuben lost his birthright due to his transgression where he slept with Jacob's concubine Bilhah. And they become the 2 other tribes to inherit the land. So the 12 tribes of Israel come out of this. And then the tribe of Levi, the priests who were the tribe, they weren't given land, they were given 6 cities scattered throughout the land. They were also in charge of the tabernacle and the temple, and their inheritance was the Lord. And so that's the history lesson for the day, leading up to the story, right? And so we have Joseph. He comes in. He's the firstborn of the favorite wife, right? And so he's got a lot of favor towards him, right? And so Joseph, around the age of 17, I don't know, I looked up everybody's got different ages, you know. Around the age of 17, then they give him this coat of many colors, right? And so anytime he was given a coat or a cloak or something like that, it kind of like showed some kind of importance, some kind of significance to it, right? Remember the son that wanted his inheritance early, and he left and he squandered it all, and then he was living with the pigs. When he came home, what did the father do? You know, he had the fatted calf, and he gave him his ring, and what did he put on him? His robe, showing that he was restored. He is of importance, right? And that kind of shows how each and every one of us, regardless of the sin of our past, we are of great importance, right? And that we are still heirs to God's throne. Amen. And so, anyways, like many kids, I know, when watching growing up, I didn't have no siblings, but I watched other siblings. But like many kids I know, when shown some favoritism by a parent or parents, they'd rub the other siblings' noses in it just for fun, right? They're like, "Hey, look at me," and they kind of strut like a peacock and show that, "Hey, look at me, I'm the favorite today," you know. And then the other one might get some more favoritism. They would flaunt it in front of the other one, you know. And they'd all. I remember, you know, different kids that growing up with, they would have fun with it, you know what I mean, and let the other ones know about it, you know. And I strutted around all the time because I was afraid of it all the time in my family. but I was also an only child. You know, every time mom introduced me to somebody, I said, well, they said, oh, and you're their son? You're Joy's son? I said, yeah, I'm the favorite. She goes, oh, she goes, ain't that cute? How do you know? I said, because I was the only one. You know, I mean, the most loved or the most hated, I don't know which, you know. And so, but anyways, so this caused the brothers to be upset, but not so much, but they're more upset after Joseph tells his brother about a couple of dreams he had, right? And he tells them that he's going to rule over them. Well, that, I mean, at this time, he's the younger brother. I mean, one of the younger brothers, that don't go over too well, right? Like, what do you mean you're going to rule over us, right? You got the coat and you're going to rule over us? Like, boy, you done got the big head, boy. And so they want to kind of put their brother in his place, and so, and then there was talks about we should just kill him because they were so upset with him, you know. And so they take him out, and you know, eventually they're going to kill him. They end up throwing him in the hole and everything, and the older brother was gonna come. He kind of decided, I think he was going to come back and rescue him, right? And they decided, they see some travelers, like, you know what, hey, we're just going to sell him. So they sell him into slavery. Instead of leaving him in the hole to die like they were talking about doing, they sell him to these passerbyers. He goes, he becomes a slave, right? And he becomes a slave to Potiphar now. Potiphar is the captain of the guard to who? Old Pharaoh, right? To the Pharaoh. And he finds favor with Potiphar. Everything he begins to do, it seems like everything that Joseph puts his hands to, it turns to gold, right? And so eventually Potiphar puts him in charge of the whole entire household. And then the only problem he has now is that, you know, he's doing such a good job. He must be a fair-looking young man that Potiphar's wife, she takes a liking to him. And so she keeps making advances towards him, and he keeps telling her, no, you know, I've been put in charge of this stuff. I'm not have nothing to do with you because that would disrespect, you know, Potiphar. And so one day when they're all alone, the husband's gone and everything, she comes up to him, she grabs him by the cloak, and she's making advances again. And so to get away from temptation, what does he do? He just slips out, right? And so she's standing there with his cloak in her hand, and he might be running around in his whitey-tighty somewhere, right? Trying to get away. And so he's running around. Next thing you know, she's screaming to the guards, and the guards come, and she claims that he made advances on her and everything else. And so when Potiphar has no other choice, you know, but he's got to throw him in prison. So now he's put in prison. And then he's in prison, and he begins to do stuff in prison, and the man over the prison is impressed by this, and so he puts him in charge of over all the inmates. And so I worked shoe again the other night on overtime, and so I kind of envision it being like he's the orderly. You know, you got all the inmates in special housing unit, where all the bad guys, the troublemakers are, and then you'll find a couple of guys that have been down there that haven't been causing trouble, and you make them the orderlies. And so they clean the range, they clean the showers, they get 2 trays instead of 1 tray of food. They don't have to be cuffed to walk around in the cell house. Everyone else has to be cuffed and has to have a guard with them at all times. And so they get a little more favoritism. And so I kind of feel like, you know, this is kind of his presence. Joseph is given this, you know, kind of over all the inmates, right? And so he does well with that. And then next thing you know, he finds that the king's thrown in the baker and the cupbearer. They're down there in the prison cell, right? And so you're thinking, man, if the cupbearer's down there, well, I mean, either if someone put poison in the cup and he didn't want to drink, I mean, what's going on, right? I mean, I'm thinking all kinds of bad stuff. Maybe it was the bread man that put something in the cup. And he got word, he's like, I ain't drinking that, you know, because I'm going to die. But anyways, they get thrown in prison. They have some dreams. And so what does Joseph do? He says, well, it's not me that can interpret, but it's God that can interpret these things. You got to remember, a lot of times people say, well, Joseph couldn't interpret dreams. He says constantly, he says, well, it's not me that can interpret, but God can interpret these things. And so he said, you know, so he asked God, and God interprets it, what the dreams meant, and he tells him, you know, that in 3 days' time he'll be back before the king, blah, blah, blah. And so the cupbearer, he gets back in good graces with the king, and the bread man, well, he kind of died, right? And he tells the cupbearer, he said, now when you get before the king, don't forget me and get put in a good word for me. Well, the cupbearer and all the excitement, he forgets all about it till a few years later, right? Old Pharaoh's had some dream, and he's got all of his sorcerers and astrologers and all them, and nobody can tell him what this dream's about. No one can tell him. And so he finally he goes, oh man, I messed up, man. I forgot to tell you. He said, there's this guy down in prison. He interpreted me and the bread man. He interpreted our dreams, and everything happened exactly. I'm free, and that guy died. He said that's what would happen. And he said, well, bring him here. So immediately they bring him in, right? He interprets the dream. It's going to be what? 7 years of just great wealth, and followed by 7 years of famine. And because no one else could tell him about his dream, he said, man, you're so great. He puts him in second command of everything, right? Second command of everything. Now, last time, who else did we read about when we talked about this not too long ago? Wasn't it Daniel? Daniel, right? And then he was put in charge of so much, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he kind of put them over a bunch of other stuff, you know, and I think that they gave him like a special robe and a ring, and so I think that he was given some kind of robe and ring to signify this great deal that he had, right? This power that he has now. So now he's back in this coat of many colors, so to speak, right? And so anyways, he's got all that. And then there's the famine finally comes. He's storing all the food in the storehouse. The famine comes, and then his father sends his brothers, all of his brothers, hey, you got to go buy some grain so we won't die. So they come in. Immediately he recognizes them. But I think that the reason they don't recognize him is I think that when he was about 17, he couldn't grow a beard. And I think he's got a beard now, so they don't right away recognize him. Or it's been so long, and they try to put him out of their mind because of the guilt that he may be dead now, because what they did was that they took his coat of many colors and they rubbed animal blood all over it, told his dad that they found this, and his dad thought he's been dead. So his dad's been in mourning, said he'd never forget him. He's always mourning his son that he loves so much. And so the brothers come, he does all this stuff, and he does a bunch of tests. He's testing his brothers, right? Like probably most of us probably would have done, like, well, I'm going to test them. I'm going to have fun with them now because of what they did to him. I'm going to have a little bit of fun with them. So we had a little bit of fun with them. But eventually, what does he do, right? He finally tells them who he is. And they send for the father, and they have this great reunion. The Pharaoh gives them all these blessings and everything else. And I was thinking of all that because I was thinking about the adversity that the Chicago Bears were going through at halftime, right? I mean, it was horrible. And I know some people here don't want to talk about it, but I have to talk about it because it was just horrible. I mean, we're down 21-3 at halftime, right? And I was thinking about all the adversity that we've been through all season. We broke the record for the most comeback wins, being down after 2 minutes, but yet, you know, thank God we did it again, you know, for a 7th time this season. And we came down from 18, the most we've ever come back in Chicago Bears history in the playoffs, or in history period, and we won, right? And so we're going to keep moving on in the playoffs, and I thought, man, think about that adversity, right? Think about the adversity. You know, me and Dylan said, man, we'd love to hear what the halftime speech was. I'd love to know what the halftime speech was, because just like for Joseph, every single time he faced it, every time he was given lemons in life, he found a way to make lemonade. And when he didn't just make lemonade, he had some sugar to put in that lemonade. I don't know if you've had lemonade without sugar. It is kind of tart, right? I told you before about, I think it was Dave and Dylan one time at Triple E years ago, and we were sitting there, and they brought, you know, they bring the water or your tea, and they got the lemon. I laid it down there, and I remember one of the kids kept looking at it, and finally they picked it up, and I said, well, try it out, and they put it in their mouth. Oh, they've never done that ever again, right? Too tart. But Joseph, every time he faced all kinds of adversity in life, he found a way to take what the lemons life was throwing at him and make lemonade out of it, right? I mean, from his brothers and being divided from his family, I can imagine what that felt like. Then what it felt like to be having to travel with these slave traders or whatever, them being in Potiphar's house, being a slave, but then slowly being put into this prestige or this power, but you're still a slave, right? You still got the title of slave. To be accused and go to prison, to spend all that time in prison knowing you're innocent, but you continue to strive to be the best that you can be, to continue to help other people out and tell them about their dreams and stuff, what God reveals to you. Then to go before the king, and then do all the things that the kingdom, you know, and you look, and you're like, well, man, he did great. Everything that was prophesied in his dream came to pass, right? It all came to pass. He was over his brothers. He was in a place of high authority. But every single one of us, we face all kinds of things in life, right? We face stuff all the time. We face adversity. But when life gives you lemons, what we got to learn to do? Make lemonade, right? And don't forget to put a little sugar in it. Amen? So many times, life, man, it is rough. It'll chew you up and try to spit you out. Man, it was rough. I was texting my buddy. I said, I don't know if I can keep watching this game. I'm getting sick watching it. 21-3. Everything we tried to do was just wrong. We just couldn't. We first started off real good, but then we didn't get a touchdown. We spent like 7.5, 8 minutes on the clock, and then we didn't get a touchdown out of it. And I was like, man, this ain't good. We needed that touchdown to start off, and then it just went downhill from there. And but I just kept believing. I said, no, this is what we do. We wait till the fourth quarter to start playing football for some reason, and we'll just keep watching.
Was that the Packers game?
Yeah.
Nice.
Good. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate that. Oh shoot, I'm having fun.
Double win there.
Yeah. And so life, man. Life, everyday life. You know, I find all the time, like I've told you before so many times, when I'm working throughout the day, when I'm doing stuff throughout the day, when I'm at home sometimes, God will ask me, he said, Dale, did you give me your best today? Did you give me your best? Right? And that's all we can do is just give our best. That's all God asks of me, is that I give my best. A lot of times I say, yeah, I gave you my best today, God. I gave my best in this situation. I gave my best in this situation at work, right? And then other times I'm like, well, God, and he was like, well, what are you going to do about it? Right? And so that's always one of the things that I just always try to instill, not just in myself, but my workers are like, did you give it your best today? Did you give it your best, right? And they're like, well, boss, and I was, well, yeah, no, you was trying to do some cooking on the side, and you was taking guys to get their commissary. I said, I saw you out there using my truck to drop people off and do this and that. And like, well, all right, boss. And I'm just all the time, just, you know, I'm expecting you to give me your best every day. You know what I mean? For 12 cents an hour, I'm expecting your best, right? It's hard to motivate people when you get paid 12 cents an hour.
State pay, boy, I said state pay.
So my best worker, he gets 40 cents an hour. My number one inmate, 40 cents an hour, right?
I work for good time.
Yeah. And so you just gotta, in everything, right? I've got a guy working for me right now that he fixes, he's a MacGyver. I never had an inmate like him before. He fixes everything. We've had stuff broke for 20 years that I don't care about, but these other guys care about. It's not my job, it's the electrician's job, but the inmates that are there like, hey, can you look at this since you fix everything else? He comes back and he says, hey, I got that fixed. That thing's been broke for 20 years, man. It's been broke longer than I've been here. And he's fixing stuff left and right. But he's learned that life has thrown him lemons, and he's making lemonade because he knows that everything he can learn right now is to prepare him for a better future when he gets out for his wife and his kids. Right? And so he's taking everything that he has at his disposal to prepare for something else. No matter what Satan has thrown at you, no matter what Satan has put at your feet, right? No matter how many lemons are piling up, just go, hey, you know what? God's going to use all things for what? For good. He can use all things for good. In some way, shape, form, or fashion. Right? And so, And Joseph, he's thankful for all those lemons because he was able to have lemonade. Became a man of great stature and power, right? Prosperity is more than wealth, right? God views prosperity much different than we do. Material things are not, indicative of prosperity. True prosperity is knowing that God is with you. True prosperity is keeping His vision alive in your heart. True prosperity is not wealth itself, but God's favor, His anointing, His power that works in your life to obtain it. Deuteronomy 18 says, "Thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is He that giveth thee power to get wealth, that He may establish His covenant." Joseph believed he was prosperous because his new prosperity came from God, not man. He had this image on the inside that wasn't affected by his circumstance. It enabled Joseph to operate in faith. Instead of licking his wounds and complaining, which a lot of times I do, I'll start licking my wounds and I'll complain, and that's a natural process for every single one of us, right? But you're going to continue to keep licking those wounds and complaining, or you can choose to move on. You can choose to do something else, right? Joseph served others and ministered wholeheartedly to the needs of other people, regardless of how bad his situation was. He had a doozy of a story he could have shared with people, but I don't think he really told them all the bad stuff. I don't think because a lot of times if we go back and we reflect on all of our bad, a lot of times what happens is we start spiraling, right? And that when it spirals like the toilet bowl, where it's going down, right? And if you're a plumber, we always tease the plumbers like, all you got to know is which way does poop go? Downhill, right? That's all. Anybody, we tell the plumber, anybody can be a plumber. You just got to know which way poop goes, downhill, right? And so that's always the running joke. As he diligently labored, God blessed the work of his hands. God blessed the work of his hands. As a piano player and vocalist, worship leaders come up. If Joseph can do it, so can you, right? You have the same power dwelling on the inside of you that raised Jesus from the dead. Joseph didn't even have all that. You got to begin to see yourself as God sees you. You're a prosperous person. You're a loved of God, regardless of your physical circumstances. Recognize and acknowledge the fact that God is with you. God is with you, and He is for you. And yes, the enemy, he comes to what? Steal, kill, and destroy. But Christ says, I came that you may have life and have a what? More abundant. So, when life throws you lemons, don't just sit there and lick them. Make something out of it, right? So many times, I've had all kinds of lemons thrown my way, and then I got to decide what I'm going to do with it, So many times I've sucked on those lemons in life. Sucked on them for a long time sometimes. You know what? It don't get no better. It just sours. It's amazing. About the only thing I like lemon juice for is when you go to Triple E, I put that lemon on them fish fillets before I eat it, but then I got to use the tartar sauce too. Because they don't taste as good as the crappie and bass that I eat, But anyways, getting off track there. Start talking about food, everybody, I'm not hungry right now. Thanks a lot. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do that. Life, Joseph, I love Joseph's story. His story runs through my mind all the time. That regardless of all the bad things that this world tries to throw at, that Satan tries to throw at us, that we have to keep getting back up. Satan's going to try to knock you off your horse, whatever you want to call it, out of life. He's going to try to knock you down. We just got to keep getting back up and keep fighting, right? When I got that cancer, I was like, I had to make a choice. Am I going to lay down here, or am I going to keep fighting? What am I going to do? We have to make choices every day in life. Do we let Satan get the best of us here? Or we say, you know what? I know who I am in the Word of God, and what it says who I am. I'm going to make something out of it, right? Each and every one of us every day, we have to make something out of it. You got to receive what the Word of God says in your heart, and you got to do something with it. You got to put what? Faith in that what? Action. Right? All right.